Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I've been getting started on dehydrating the first herbs of spring, and for us that is the stinging nettle, the feverfew, and the dandelion flowers. Those are the three things that we start with because those are the first three things are grown prolifically. Now as far as the feverfew, this is only going to apply to the feverfew that is has come back from the previous years, not to any new ones. I'm sure that you've probably figured that out, but feverfew is one of the first herbs to really start taking off in the early spring. And then of course you've got your dandelion flowers. Now I leave the leaves for a little bit longer. I like to allow them to grow and get bigger. And then usually the roots, if I'm going to harvest them, I harvest them in the spring of the next year from that same plant. But mostly lately I've just been leaving a lot of my dandelions because I like where they're growing and just using them year to year for the sake of the flowers and the leaves. Even though there's a lot of great benefits in those roots, I do have a video out I did, I think last year it was, on dandelions and how to tell the difference between dandelions and cat's ear. But I tell you one thing, dandelion will bloom long before cat's ear, so you know that's what you're getting. And both are fine. Dandelions just have more benefits than the cat's ear does. So I just got done picking some of the flowers. I try to leave some for the bees, even though we don't really have any bees that come around here until my borage really starts blooming. We do get a few, so I try to make sure, since they're the first flowers of spring, that I leave some for the bees. So make sure you think about that. I wanted to show you one of the things that I started doing with my herbs. Now I just started doing this because I only do this with the herbs that I get closer to the road or anywhere in the front yard where I'm thinking animals may have peed on it or whatever. And that is, I take my homemade vinegar. Right here I've homemade citrus vinegar, and I spray the herbs down really well with the vinegar. And I'm going to tell you why, even if you're not worried about anything that might be on your herbs, why this is a good idea, especially with your dandelion flowers, to do. Now all of these were harvested from my front yard. So I spray them down with the citrus vinegar, and then I like to let them sit for a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully rinse them off and then let them drain, and then I will put them on my dehydrator rack. So one of the things I discovered, especially with the dandelion flowers, is that by doing this step, even with the ones you may not be worried about having anything on them, something about this seems to help preserve them a little bit better. A lot of people talk about how their dandelions, when they go to dry them, their dandelions turn into poof balls. Now I get that sometimes, but I found that by using the vinegar, this does seem to help prevent that from happening, at least in my case. So give it a try and see if that works for you. Okay, so I'm going to rinse these off, and once they're drained, I'm going to come back and I want to show you a new thing I do now when I go to dehydrate the herbs. Please forgive the noise. Patrick's out in the main garden. He's actually doing one more, trying to work in all the goodies that we threw out there into the main garden bed. So while I was waiting for the feverfew and the dandelion flowers to drain a little bit, I remembered that the valerian out front was having some pretty good sized leaves on it. It's just doing great out there, a lot better than the ones out back do. Of course, I don't have the chickens digging this one up out there, but anyway, what you'll find, I did do a video just on valerian. In fact, I'll show you a little video clip right here of what my valerian looked like last year before a chunk of the roofing blew off while they were putting the new roof down, and the wind picked up a piece and knocked it straight down onto my valerian and chopped it clear down to the ground. But anyway, it got up to over 8 feet tall, but it's okay. It didn't hurt it any. It just caused it to just blow up even more. And anyway, so it's a good healthy plant. And what a lot of people, they only think of the root when it comes to valerian, but the leaves and the flowers, you can use those as well. And they do have the similar benefits. They're just not quite as powerful, and yet the flavor of the flowers and the leaves is a little better than the root. So if you're just wanting something to help you relax, making a tea out of the leaves and or the flowers in the evening is really good. It does also help you to sleep, and remember, it doesn't make you drowsy. It just helps you to relax, calms the nerves, which then helps induce a really good sleep. So that is why I'm using the leaves and the flowers as they come in. Here is the dandelions I picked so far and dried, so you can see how they look in there. They have a real nice color. It just seems like the vinegar helps them to also retain their color a lot better as they're dehydrating. Now onto the dehydrating. Even though I really like the Nesco, I like the fact that I've got the stackable trays. I have a total of 4. First one I got it at an auction over 20 years ago. The motor still runs. I've had a couple of the trays and the base break on me, but the motor still runs. The other 3 I have, I've picked up all at garage sales. The most expensive one, $5. I don't think it had even been used. And the other 2, I think I paid $3 a piece for. And so I grabbed them because it might sound stingy, but the thing is I like to run several at a time when we have the peak of sun and herbs coming in. So I can run all those on our solar power. I can have a whole bunch of stuff drying at once. I can go up to 12 trays high a piece if I want. I do like to keep it between 4 and 8 at 8 tops. I find it dries best that way. But thing I don't like about it is all the plastic. And so I came up with this idea last year by making these little fabric donuts that I can lay on here. It's just an old cotton sheet that I washed up really well. Then use the fruit roll-up tray, the fruit leather tray, and use that as a template to draw my circles, and trying to make the circle around here as small as possible, because the first ones I made the circles too big, and this ended up being a little bit too floppy. So I made some new ones, and these fit in here really nicely. And this just helps keep there not being so much plastic touching the herbs while they're drying. So I'm just going to toss my dandelions on this tray. I'm going to put all of these on one tray. It'll dry just fine. And again, you want to set your temperature at 95 to 110. You can probably, with some herbs, some of the thicker herbs, you can go up to 115 and it'll be good. You really don't want to go higher than that, because too much heat can actually be detrimental to the benefits of the herbs themselves. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and put these. What I like to do with the valerian is that stem is very thick, so I just take the the thick part of the stem off and just pull these leaves off here. Just pretty much strip most of the leaves off. And then I'll put this feverfew on there, and you can break some of these bigger chunks of stem off. I don't worry about it too much, because once it's dehydrated up, I usually just crumble the leaves off of there into a bowl and then put it in my jar. So this is feverfew from this year. And you want to get any of your herbs that are coming in now, get started on them now, because as your garden comes along and you have more and more herbs coming in, like I plan on drying up, we just love peppermint tea, and we went through a lot of it this last year. I still have all my peppermint from 2019, but I'm on my last jar of 2018. So I really want to get a lot of put up. So I need to get all this, as much of this behind me now as I can. And so there we have it. I have my dandelions, my valerian leaves, and my feverfew leaves ready to dry. Again, I'll put these on for about, I'm going to set it at about 100, 110 degrees tops, and then just leave it for the rest of the day. If they're not dry by evening, then what I do is I unplug it, because I don't want it draining my solar power during the night. And then I just plug it back in the morning, and usually a couple more hours it's fully dry. I do have a video on each one of the 3 herbs I showed you here. So one just on dandelions, how to tell the difference between the cat's ear and the dandelion itself. Same thing goes for the valerian and for the feverfew. Okay, so I've got the lid on there. I just got to take it in there where my solar power outlet is and get it plugged in, and then make sure that my temperature isn't too high. Yep, it's set right about where I want it. I usually set it about 110. I find that to be a good temperature. So I'm going to go plug this in, and I'm going to let it dry for the rest of the day. And then tomorrow, when these are fully dry, I'll show you what I do with them. All right, well, I'm back to finish up on these herbs that I started yesterday, plus I'm starting some more. So it's really important that as soon as your herbs really start getting some good leaves, start harvesting them now, all of them, before they start to flower. You're going to get a lot more leaves out of them that way, and then also in turn you should get a lot more flowers. That's why you want to get started. So even if you only end up with one little tray of herbs to start with, don't worry, in a week, 2 weeks, you're gonna have more than you know what to do with. So the other day I froze up and dehydrated up a whole bunch of stinging nettle. I just went ahead and got some more stinging nettle. I got 2 more trays here that are going to go on today. I got some more dandelion flowers. Again, the more you pick them, the more they're going to make more flowers. So keep up on them while still leaving some for the bees, like I said yesterday. Every herb's going to be different on the amount of time that it takes to dry, depending on the thickness of them. But most of your herbs are rather on the delicate side and can dry up fairly quickly. So 6 to 8 hours, a lot of them can be done, even at a temperature of around 100 degrees, 105. But some could still take longer, so you just want to check them. Now, I didn't even check them last night when I unplugged it. I just unplugged it, so again, since it's running off solar, I don't want to drain the batteries, but depending on the dehydrator you have, if you feel safe running it through the night, and if you know you're going to get up early, then that should be fine. I just don't prefer to do that. So I plugged them in for a couple hours today without even checking them, and they are just very, very dry. I like to take them and just toss them in a bowl. So I can take this whole piece of fabric here and just kind of dump them in there. You might even want to get a bigger bowl so you're not dumping them all over the counter. I just take them then and smash them up with my fingers like this. The nice thing about this is I can also feel to see if there's any really woody parts like this, or parts that didn't fully get dehydrated, and decide whether or not I want to keep them. It just depends on the herb and what you're going to use it in. If you're going to use it for seasoning, these are things you may want to take out. But since this is valerian, it will be used for making teas and extracts, then, and even capsules, because it goes in my pain relief capsule. Then I'm not worried about the stems being in there. It'll be fine as long as they're broke up kind of small. So my next one is the feverfew. And then again, I just smash it up with my fingers, looking for those wet, like these right here, some of these stems, which I don't mind. They're still not fully dry, so I'm just gonna toss those out. You can choose to throw them back on your dehydrator with some other herbs and finish drying them. Depending on what it is, I sometimes do that. I have a lot of feverfew, and I get lots of feverfew, so I'm not concerned about the stems, and I'd prefer to have it just be the leaves, and then when the flowers come in, I dry those up too, some of them. Most of them get saved for seed that then go on our store. So we'll go ahead, get this added in here to this jar, 2020 jar. Also, between using your bowl, just take a clean but dry cloth and just wipe your herbs out of there. You know, especially if you're concerned about having them mixed in with anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and vacuum seal this one. It's not quite full yet, but let's show how this works. I used to always link to these on Amazon, but now because of the way things are going, you can't get them on Amazon anymore. But I did go directly to the Food Saver site, and you can buy these there, and they're actually a little bit cheaper, but I think you probably still have to pay shipping. But I did go look because a lot of people have been asking me. So these are really handy to have, and a lot of people are buying them up right now. So get yourself a set. You know, you can get the regular mouth and the wide mouth. So then you just take your brake bleeder or your Food Saver, stick the hose in there, and just pump it up. If you're using a brake bleeder like me, and your brake bleeder is calibrated at 0 where it should be when it's new, then you pump it up to about 15, 16. Since mine has been used for at least 3 years straight, at least that long, maybe longer. And yes, the regular mouth, the little gasket always comes out every time you pull it off, but you just slip it back in there, no big deal. It only does that on the regular mouth. You get used to how it should feel when it gets to that point where you know it's sealed anyway. And then I usually just go a couple of points above that. So since mine is well used and you can see it's off, then I just go that much farther to make sure. Dandelions, I don't need to bother putting them in a bowl and breaking them up. I just put them directly in the jar. These are nice and dry. The only thing about the cloth is the flowers and some of the things just kind of want to stick to it a little bit. But I'd still rather do this and just prevent having quite so much plastic exposure on my herbs. And then again, if you're interested how I use my dandelion flowers, that video that I was talking about where I talked about the benefits, I also talk about how I use the flowers, the leaves, and the roots. I use them all a little bit differently. So again, with the wide mouth, we'll go ahead and vacuum seal this up. Okay, it's all sealed. And you can see the gasket doesn't slip out of the wide mouth when you use that. The regular mouth one is just one of those irritations. You get used to it after a while. It's just what it does. And I've had other people say their regular mouth one does the same. But it still works, and that's what's important. Oh, and I will link to the brake bleeder down below. As far as I know, it's still available. I don't use the electric food saver anymore. I'm done with it. I'm just tired of them breaking down and not working after 2 years. And mostly I just do vacuum sealing into jars anyway. So the brake bleeder is great. It's totally off grid. It's cheaper than a food saver, and it's lasted me a lot longer. All right, so I'll be putting my nettle on the dehydrator. I'll be putting some more dandelion flowers. I like to pick the flowers as soon as they open up, by the way. That's the best time to get it, when they're first blooming. The older flowers are going to be the ones that also are more likely to turn into a puffball as you're drying it. So try to get them as young as possible and as soon as they open in the morning, which isn't going to be until after the sun hits them for a little bit. So just be watching that. Usually what I do with the dandelions, I just keep going out through the day and checking, oh, here's some more, and then just add to it that way. The other reason why you want to get started early on your dehydrating, as I think I said this earlier, but I'll say it again just in case, and that is just to keep up on it. So if you start it now, then when you have a bunch more that are coming in heavy loads, if you got enough of all your other ones, like your nettle and your feverfew and your dandelions, now you can focus on the dandelion leaves and the catnip and your mints and your oregano and sage and so on and so forth. And then of course then later you're going to have your vegetables like your zucchini and your onions and those other things you may want to dehydrate. So getting this stuff done right away is important to free up more time for you to get the other ones done later in the year when they're all coming in like crazy. And oh yes, I also have a video on the stinging nettle, the benefits, how I harvest it, how I use it. All right, so I hope this helps. Be watching for more of these videos, and don't forget to check out the herb profiles I have. Thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.